Welcome to Being Creative, everybody. What are we doing? We're actually going to do another episode. By we, I mean me, of course, because my name is Rick Leaf, and as you know, I'm the host of this show. And today's episode, it's about connection. I got 3 stories about connection I want to share with you. The first is from a Dene elder who's talking about the traditional connection that his people had to the land. The second story is about connection to and through creativity. And finally, the last story is about connection to community. So I love stories. I know all 5 of you out there listening like stories. So without further ado, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you. Otherwise, it'd be really awkward. I'd be by myself in a room, just talking to myself. All right. I love stories. And I know all 5 of you out there listening. I know all of you like stories. So let's jump right into it. Connection. Man, it's fleeting and it's hard to come by. And I don't know about you, but I miss the connection that I maybe used to have to community. And I don't have that in the way I used to, and it's easy to maybe for a lot of us to blame it on COVID and we've never bounced back. But I think there's deeper things going on, and it's made me think about all of this stuff that I want to get into in this story. So I truly am glad you're here. I hope you're going to find yourself and your perspective and some element of your story in these stories that I'm going to share here today in this episode. I feel really privileged in my life to have a number of experiences through work that I would just never, ever have otherwise. I travel a lot. I get to go north a lot to the Northwest Territories and parts of the Arctic, and work with indigenous communities lots of times, doing these creative development mentorship programs. And that can be audio projects like recording songs and singers, drum groups sometimes. It can also involve video projects where we're telling a story visually. Could be on the land, could be traditional language, whatever. And a lot of times it has to do with these youth mentorship programs and projects that are helping young people, use technology in a way that actually empowers them to tell and to share their story, as opposed to technology which just further isolates us, through social media. That'll be a rant. I get into it a little bit later in this episode. But recently, in the last few weeks, I was up north, and it was a combination of these things. It was some high school students, myself, and some elders, and we were traveling from the community. It was a Dene community, and we were traveling to these falls so that the elder could share some of the stories that and ceremonies actually that were and teachings that went in association with these falls and with the territory to the youth. And the youth that were there, I was giving them cameras and mics, and I was teaching them how to record and film the elders so that we could capture these stories and preserve the teachings and in a way that would be able to be passed on, and people would be able that weren't at that standing around in the forest there listening to the elder, that the idea of using technology to preserve these stories. So I would love to just jump right in, because Roy Fabian was the elder who's talking in this clip, and I would just love to start by you being able to imagine you're standing in the circle with us as Roy begins to share this.
Yeah, we just want to thank you for inviting us here to talk about the falls. As Dene people, we've been living in this part of the world for time immemorial. And we really don't know how long we've been here. As Dene people, we lived on this land and we knew everything about this land. And through relationship with the land, in Denechini is what they call it, a relationship with the land, they develop all their beliefs, their values, their knowledge, and their skills. Everything comes from the land. And because God created this earth, in order for him to create things, he had to give his spirit to everything. In order for something to exist, it had to have God's spirit. It is important to remember that when you have relationship with the land, that God is here with us all the time. So that's the way the people saw the land.
You know, even standing around that circle, the thing that really jumped out at me was when Roy's talking about, through their relationship with the land, they developed all their beliefs, their values, their knowledge, and their skills. And it makes me think, as somebody who I don't live in the territory where I was raised or born or raised, and I don't live where my family, my grandparents came from northern Scandinavia. I don't have a connection to our traditional territory. And it makes me wonder, as I watch people around me and I listen to people around me who, as we're constantly encouraged to view others as the problem, othering different groups of people based on whatever, however we're encouraged to see them as the enemy and see them as the threat to our existence or our hope or our dreams or whatever. And I think, is this because we've lost our relationship with the land and the place that we're actually from? And are we seeing what happens all around us as people actually don't have a place where their beliefs and their values and knowledge and skills are grounded and rooted? It's really interesting to me. I remember when I was sitting at the Standing Nation, this teaching drum, Anishinaabe teaching drum that was based out of the First People's House at the University of Victoria here in Lekwungen territory many years ago. When I first moved here, I had this opportunity to sit at the drum, and Rob Spade was the drum keeper. And actually, I remember him, he would tell these stories about, he was here because his partner was getting their master's degree or PhD. I can't actually remember. Maybe it was their PhD. Anyway, sorry. No, my story, I can't remember which one it was. But he was living in a territory not his own. And he said, I don't know if I walked out into the forest here, I don't know what plants or are for healing this or for that. This isn't my territory, so I don't know how to live off the land. I don't know which plants are medicine. I don't know which plants are for this or for that, which are toxic. I don't know. And he said to some of us, like somebody like me, he's like, I don't know actually how you live. If you don't have a connection to where you're from or where you are now, how do you approach any of this stuff? And I remember it just being a really interesting conversation. So, I love this notion of and this teaching about that these things like beliefs and values and knowledge and skills are coming from the relationship and the connection to the land. And I can only look from the outside of that and wonder what that would be like. And if you're out there and you have a connection to the land that you're living in, I think that's profound. I think that is one of those things. I don't remember who said this to me years ago, but they said, Rick, typically what you think is normal, somebody else will find amazing. And I, in my life now, find it amazing when I have an opportunity to spend time with elders who are connected to the land, and that their teachings and their beliefs and values and knowledge and skills come from this place of connection. I find that profound. I find it amazing. I always feel very grateful to have the opportunity to sit and to listen to them and learn from them. and apply it in whatever way I can to my own experience. So I love listening to elders, and I love being out on the land in particular when a story like that. I've heard elders in schools tell these kinds of stories, but it just adds this element when you're actually out there. Maybe you're around a fire, or you're at the river banks, or in that case, we were standing right on the edge, looking down over this incredible waterfall and hearing the stories that had to do with that. So that was my first story I wanted to share with you. Let's jump into connection through creativity. I have a few things, as you can imagine, that I'd love to share about that. Oh my goodness. So that was Standing Nation. I referred to them earlier. The Anishinaabe powwow drum. It was a teaching drum out of the First People's House at the University of Victoria here in Lekwungen Territory. And I had the opportunity to sit at that drum for about 4 or 5 years. Rob Spade was the drum keeper. The drummers were from many different nations. What an experience that was. That was a song called Pakols. And the reason I play that is, one of the things, sitting at a big drum, you are to drum and to sing as one. So, if I remember the drum keeper, he would teach us, you would imagine a bullseye at the center of the drum. And he would say, this is one. And then moving out from that, maybe the size of a dinner plate kind of circumference or whatever, he'd say this is 2. 3 is further out towards the rim. The rim would be 4. The drummers were 5. The dancers were 6. And the audience or the people were 7. And so it was this idea, everything was very intentional. Everything had a teaching and a story behind it. Every song had a story behind it. And you would play it for different reasons. And some songs would be sacred and for ceremonies. Other songs would be for fun or for teaching or whatever. And if your drum keeper, if he started on the rim and he was drumming, this, not only that tempo, you were to match that tempo, but if he was matching that intensity of hitting, you were supposed to also be drumming at that same intensity. You're not supposed to be wailing away if he's playing quieter. If he moves into closer to the middle of the drum and starts playing harder and louder, you're to match that. If he's singing louder, you're to match that. And that whole idea, there was times I remember the magical moments would be, the drum, we're shoulder to shoulder around the drum and we're drumming. We've moved into the third or the second part, we're drumming hard and we're singing loud. And I can't tell where my voice starts and somebody else's finishes. I know physically that I'm singing at the top of my lungs, but I can't really hear my voice distinguished from that of the drummers. And I'm drumming with all of my might, and I can't really hear my drum beat because everything was in sync. And that whole connection through creativity was so powerful. I really miss it. I've had opportunities like that as an artist throughout kind of my entire adult life. You get together with a group of people. You might know them really well, or you might not know them really well. If you've ever heard stories about, where a band like, Queen or Led Zeppelin or different bands like, really famous bands like that, that, they'd go on tour for 6 months, let's say, and be playing like 4 or 5 nights a week for half a year. And then when they get off the road, they kind of go their separate ways and they don't really see each other until it's time to come back together and rehearse for the next album or the next tour. And I think for some people outside of a band, you'd be like, oh, that seems really weird. Like, you're best friends and you're hanging out. And that's the interesting thing. You're not always best friends. Sometimes you're friendly, but the perfect person to be playing with and creating with may not be the perfect person that you want to hang out with on Friday night and or go for coffee with and chat. It's interesting that way. And I think that I wonder if I could find it. Hold on one second. There was I moved to Winnipeg many, many years ago in a big entourage of artists that were moving from the West Coast to BC. And we moved out to Winnipeg and we put this band together. And I still remember I wanted to put together a band, and I had my guitar player and we knew there was us, but we didn't have the rest of a band. And we were walking downtown Winnipeg. I don't know what we were doing. And we saw this poster for a band contest or something. And we're like, you know what? We're new to the city. That'd be a great thing to enter just so that we could start meeting some other bands, maybe get to know them. So we walked into the club. We happened to be walking by the club where this contest was going to be taking place. And I just thought, we had lots of time. This contest would maybe start in a month or so, and we'd have a chance to get, things together. So we walk in, we're like, hey, we got the name of this band, Tribe of One. And, we'd like to enter this contest, and how do we sign up? And they're like, okay, we'll sign up right here. And then they were like, we need you to put down the names of your band, everybody that's in your band. So we're sitting there like, I just grabbed 2 names out of a fantasy book. One was a druid and probably the other one was a wizard or something. 'Cause we didn't know that we were supposed to have names of band members. So we didn't have a bass player or a drummer. And then they're like, so can you guys play on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock? And this is like in a few days. And I'm like, oh, sorry, we're already booked. Just thinking on the fly. Cause I'm like, I don't have a band. I don't have a set. I haven't rehearsed. I haven't done anything in here. But I can't tell them that. So they're like, okay, well then, play the next, Thursday. Okay, can't be booked every night. So we just walked out of there going, okay, Thursday at 11 o'clock at night is our first gig. We better go find a drummer and a bass player, which we did. And we started putting together a set. And this is all leading up to the story. So we get together. And at that point, let's say I have, half a dozen songs that I can teach the band how to play. But then as we start playing as a band, you're going to write new material. And I remember the night we wrote this song, Sam. I had this idea for the lyrics. Well, I'd probably written the lyrics. I maybe had a rough idea of a melody. I'm not sure. But I think it just all started getting built slowly, piece at a time. It was one of those magical moments where the bass player starts playing a groove, the guitar player starts playing over top of that, the drummer starts coming in, I start finding my groove, start singing, the lyrics that I've got over this thing, it starts coming together. Sometimes in those moments, you might play that song for 20 or 30 minutes, just trying different things, looking at each other across the room, changing it up, maybe speeding up, slowing down, trying to find things. We found that song, and it was amazing. And there was a couple dancers and an artist who were upstairs at the time, just having coffee, listening to us down, working. And when we finally finished playing, one of the dancers came running downstairs into the room, super excited. And she said, I could choreograph a dance to that song. Let me just quickly play you as the song starts coming together. I'm just going to find it and play it for you. Hang on. I don't know if those other guys, I'm sure they would remember that night as well as me, because these moments of connection that you have through creativity, where you're making something up out of nothing and you're doing it together, that is an experience that is so incredible, and it's life-changing. And I think part of what's life-changing, at least for my perspective, is that it requires risk-taking from everybody that's in the room. You have to have a safe place to try something to get it wrong. That guitar player, it has to be a safe place for him to be searching and finding for those notes and hit a wrong note, and nobody loses their place. Nobody makes a face or stops to say, well, that shouldn't have happened. You just keep going, and the drummer's just trying to find the right beat and trying to find the fills and playing over, and everybody's just in this creative moment. And that sense of connection and that what it requires from each one of you for the courage and the boldness to be honest enough and whatever. Courage is the only word that comes to mind. Courageous enough to try, to step outside of the comfort zone and really go for it. That's where you experience the magic. So yeah, that creativity, I've had that with many different people over the years. One of the things that I've actually, I don't know whether it's very common for other artists and creative people or not. I think more common for us maybe than not. But, I started off my career in kind of a subculture, a religious subculture, a movement, and couldn't handle that for very long. So I left that. And through chance and circumstance and relationship with people in Winnipeg, started, playing guitar for this lesbian folk group called the Weird Sisters, and started meeting the LGBTQ community, and started playing and working with members of that community, even though that really wasn't my community. On the institutional or whatever you want to call it level any more than the religious one was. I was there for the music, and I was in this community for the music. And then I left Winnipeg and came to Lekwungen territory here in the city of Victoria, and was immediately invited to come sit at Standing Nation for about 4 or 5 years. Sitting at that Anishinaabe powwow drum was my primary community. That was my community, and it was my creative outlet and my connection to both. Even though, I'm not Indigenous here, I'm not from a nation here in Turtle Island. My family comes from Northern Scandinavia. So, again, it was the creativity, it was the music that connected me to my community and to myself and to this world. And all of these different experiences have always brought me back to that sense of connection and what it is and why it is. And that kind of dovetails into here. I think we should jump into the third story. Hang on, don't go anywhere. See, I don't think you need to be a musician or a dancer or a painter to be creative. Creativity, as you know, I say it over and over again, it's this, it's about problem solving. It's taking our talents and our gifts and our abilities and experience and education and applying it to whatever challenges we're faced with. And I think that creativity, the connection that comes to community and the community that's built through that is really profound. And I think one of the things I'm waiting for, I'm just going to be honest. Here's one of the most frustrating things that happens. I'll get together in a room with people and I'll be like, you know what? The online social media world And we always refer to it like, the social, like the social connection, that the social network, that it's somehow social and it's somehow community, and it's not. It's not only is it not a substitute for community, it's proven itself to be worse, far, far worse than anything else most of us have let into our life. Loneliness and isolation in 10 out of 10 cases would be probably better for our mental and physical health and our understanding of the world and those who are around us if we had nothing to do with social media. And I literally don't care what the platform is. It's all toxic, all of it. And so you start with some watered down version of a statement like that, and everybody, I swear to God, everyone will say, yeah, totally, I 100% agree. And almost in the next breath, they will then present to you the latest thing that they've picked up somewhere online, wherever they spend time in these online communities. Because as we know, the whole purpose of the online social network is to keep you engaged and to keep you on there and to spend more and more time, because that translates into like advertising dollars and everything else. And so, all of those studies that they've done, and they've said, nothing drives engagement like outrage, like rage, like anger. So just keep feeding you whatever it is that you will make you upset. They don't care what it is, as long as it keeps you on the platform. And so time and time again, I'll be like, yeah, I've just deleted this and I've deleted that. And people are like, oh yeah, totally. Facebook's crap. Oh, Instagram, hate it. Oh yeah, I'm on Truth Social. Oh yeah, I'm on whatever. I'm on Blue Sky. oh yeah, exchange Twitter for Threads. It's completely different. It's exactly the same, man. All of it. It's all the same. And I think this lack of connection to community, I feel like, I'm sure in our parents and our grandparents' age, there was always the crazy person. There was always that guy or that girl that just believed the stupidest crap. And given an opportunity to open their mouth and start flapping their gums, they would just start like rolling out this idiotic belief. And then the half a dozen people sitting around the campfire or the coffee table or whatever, back in the day before social media, those half a dozen people could roll their eyes and they could and do whatever. But that was the level. That was the extent of how far-reaching those kind of crazy, unsupported ideas would go. Just a handful of people that you would know. But now this kind of wild west of this online community has just allowed every stupid, crazy thing to go viral. And if it makes people upset, then it gets even more traction. And I feel like as I sit here and I think about connection, and I'm like, wow, that Dene elder out in the woods in the Arctic, just talking about, it was through the land that the people, they through the relationship with the land is where they develop their beliefs and their values and their knowledge and their skills. And I'm like, that sense of permanence, that sense of the seasons, that sense of what you were learning and believing and valuing, was coming from the very environment that you were living in and needed those knowledge and skills to survive the elements, and then just how it would be so relatable. And then thinking about my own experience, how, the connection, how creativity has allowed me to connect to other people and to myself in a way that, I think when I look back on why was I ever in a religious environment, well, it's how I was raised. And it took me a long time to detox that worldview and who I was allowed to be and could be and was. And I think, it was that that connection to creativity that allowed me perspective to leave behind the beliefs and the values and the knowledge that were kind of imposed on me before I was old enough to ask my own questions. And so I don't really look back with, what point is there to look back with regret anyway? But I don't really look back with a whole bunch of regret, because it's like everybody's got something in their past that they're overcoming, me included. And you look back on it and you're like, so this is why I've learned this and that and the other thing. And, right now I spend most of my time, or a lot of my time, in Indigenous communities and in schools across the country, trying to create a safe place that would allow students and youth and people who haven't had that safe place an opportunity to connect with their own creativity, with their own, talents and abilities and gifts, and normally I find that people don't even know what's going on inside of them. They don't even know what's possible. They don't even know what they're possible of, because they've never given themselves the freedom, or maybe nobody's given them the freedom. Maybe they were like me for many, many years, where it's like I didn't feel like anybody giving me permission, and if somebody else didn't give me permission, how could I give myself permission? When you're taught that you're broken and you're sinful and you're terrible and you're going to hell, and the only person who could fix you is God, but he doesn't, because you're that broken and terrible that you just keep screwing up, and it's just, you're such a mess, and you need to keep coming back and giving us your 10% of your paycheck, and your unswerving devotion to every kind of thing that we might say. I'm not bitter, I'm really not. In fact, some people, I love it when somebody's like, man, why don't you go for therapy and like work through this? And I'm like, I am, man. I have this podcast called Being Creative, and I like go through the therapy every time I do an episode. I have 5 people out there listening to me process all of the things that are going on. I'm kidding, sort of. But, you get where I'm coming from. Anyways, this idea of connection, I'm fascinated. So I feel like, in the grand scheme of things, I'm so thankful for the creative community and the people that I've had and the opportunities I've had to be creative. Even, beyond the artists that I get to tour with. One of the things that I've always found fascinating, like in Canada here, they'll divide up the country. Media type people, or just maybe just average people, would be like, oh, this part of the country's like this, and these guys are conservative, and these guys are liberal, and these guys are bonkers, and these guys are urban, and these people are rural, and we love to just carve everybody up into, paint everybody's nuance with these broad brushstrokes of stereotypical kind of categorization. And so I find myself, as an artist over the last 20 years touring across Canada, and I'm just a guy singing songs about life, about maybe a broken heart or hope or activism, or talking about poverty or whatever, frustration, anger, loneliness, doesn't matter, whatever it happens to be, telling stories, sharing those stories, sharing the songs. And it wouldn't really matter where I was. I could be in the conservative province. I could be in the liberal province. I could be with old people. I could be with young people. It didn't really matter. Art and music were this language that somehow seemed to transcend all of those distinctions and create this connection, provide this connection, and develop this sense of community through the very creativity that was, fueling my life. And I'm so thankful for that. I don't know where everybody else is in this world. I think our family right now is just coming through a real traumatic family event. None of us feel ourselves. Most of us have lost a bunch of weight because we're not eating, and that isn't a good thing, because it's not good weight loss. It's because you're not eating. You're so emotional or distressed or full of anxiety or depressed or whatever. We're not sleeping right. We're not eating right. We don't feel right. It's not normal. And so in a moment like this, to be living in this survival state, not really reaching out, not really sharing, just small. You need a world that's small and safe at this moment, just to survive. And so, if you're out there, if somebody's out there and you don't have a sense of community, you're not pursuing hopes and dreams and trying to make all stuff, there's times for everything. And I think, maybe this idea of the land where the elder was talking about the connection, through the land. I think sometimes being more in touch with our own journey and our own experience of where we're at right now. If you're in a place where you need your life to be small so that it can be safe, so that you can survive, well, I hope you don't feel embarrassed about that. I hope you don't feel ashamed, or that, that you should be anything other than you are where you are. Take care of yourself. Guard your heart. There's this life, this sense of connection. I think lots of times it's like if you've met somebody and they're just like, the only way they can survive is through pharmaceuticals. It's like their body is trying to tell them, I can't live like this. I can't live with this much anxiety. I can't live with this much stress or with this little amount of sleep or whatever. And your body's slowly and purposefully shutting down so that you would listen to it and that you would have to take a pause. And so many people seem to just like blast through all of those warning signs with, pharmaceutically fueled solutions. And I think eventually it catches up with everybody, and it could be this cataclysmic, accident. This just everything is literally going to pile up on the freeway of your life. Or you're going to realize, I need to get off this freeway and I need to take a back road for a while and just slow down. And I hope, if that's where you're at, I hope that's what you do. That's what I'm doing right now. And it's maybe why I'm sitting here pondering, where are the moments of connection in my life? How am I more connected to those things that are going to heal and help and support and strengthen me? And what are those things that I need to lose the connection to, those avenues of stress and anxiety and frustration and rage and whatever? Just this sense of self-awareness. And so it's a journey, and it's a whole bunch of stories, and they're all mixed up because being creative, right? It's a mindset. When it's your lifestyle, it's a mindset, and it's a lifestyle and mindset that produces energy, that it empowers the resiliency that gives each of us the confidence to face the challenge that life throws at us. And that process, that learning process, I have found, from my own experience, creates momentum. And it's that momentum, and God forbid, lack of that momentum, I want to share with you through these episodes, because that to me is the value, and it's what hopefully is the connection that's coming through this microphone into this podcast. So hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Feel free to leave a comment, ask a question, because I like to say, please remember, you're capable of infinitely more than you give yourself credit for. So until next time, take care.